Yo, what's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got 5 NFL teams poised for a breakout season in 2024. Let's check this out.
The 2023 NFL season left a lot on the table for a handful of teams. So in today's video, I want to talk about the 5 NFL teams that are primed for a bounce-back season in 2024.
Okay.
So before I get into my top 5 list, let's go ahead and hand out 2 honorable mentions. Those 2 honorable mentions are going to be the Carolina Panthers and the LA Chargers. For the Carolina Panthers,
I mean, yeah, I do think the Panthers are going to be a lot better than last year because they actually tried to put more talent around Bryce Young, which they did with trading for Deontay Johnson and drafting Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, and Jatavian Sanders. And on the other hand, with the Chargers, the biggest thing with them was the head coaching situation. Brandon Staley was a dumbass of a head coach, so bringing in Jim Harbaugh was huge. Even though the talent wise they lost a lot of talent with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, I still feel like they might be still decent. You know, they brought in Greg Roman, they brought in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Jim Harbaugh stealing from his brother like always. They're probably going to be more of a run focused offense this year. And they drafted Joe Alt, so you know what I'm saying. Joe Alt is a mauler in the run game, so that they're gonna possibly be one of the better run teams this year.
Like 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 games next year. So I think as long as they do that, you can consider that a bounce back season for them. I have a lot of faith in Bryce Young. I love Dave Canales, and I think their draft class was pretty solid. Then you have the LA Chargers, who last year won 5 games. They brought in a Harbaugh. You have Justin Herbert. You have still a pretty good offense and a pretty solid defense. You're gonna be healthy, hopefully, for the entire season. And if you do, I think you're going to be at least a 8 to 10 game win season next year, which is a big bounce back from 5 last year. But before I get into the video, if you guys do enjoy daily NFL content, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button because that would mean a lot to me. But let's hop into the list. Starting off at number 5, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons.
Now, for a fact, because now they have a competent quarterback who can actually play football, bro. Because Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke was not it.
With a
bro, and plus they got rid of Arthur Smith, which was huge, bro. This nigga did not know how to use his fucking talent. Like, bro, you have Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. There's no fucking reason why you shouldn't be using those guys, especially Bijan. Like, I remember it was one game he only had 1 fucking snap. Like, come on now.
Differential of -52, and after that,
I think it was that Bugs game
that they had last year, and honestly, the past couple of seasons, they decided to bring in Kirk Cousins to hopefully steer the ship in the right direction. And I think with this super talented roster and Kirk Cousins, as long as Kirk Cousins is at least like 75% of what he usually is, I think this team is primed for a pretty awesome season next year. Yeah. It feels like everything is kind of trending in the right direction for Atlanta. Your division is really winnable and one of the easiest divisions in the entire NFL.
Probably the easiest division,
schedule to go along
honest.
with that. Not to mention you get to play those NFC South teams 6 times next year, so those should probably be like 6 wins at least. And your team is super talented, and I think just because of that, and because I believe in your new head coach in Raheem Morris, and I believe in every single piece on that team, I think this team is primed for a pretty, like I said, awesome 2024. Now, what is a realistic expectation for the Atlanta Falcons? Well, I think a realistic expectation for them is to win at the bare minimum 10 games next year, and at least advance past the wild card round in the playoffs. I think this team has some expectations to be at least good enough to get to the second round. Now, I will say this: if this team fails to make it to the second round and fails to win 10 games next year, I think that's a pretty disappointing season for this roster because there's way too much talent on this team.
Thanks.
And I do believe in this coaching staff enough for them to be way better than that. So I think as long as the Atlanta Falcons play like themselves, I think if they utilize guys like Bijan, Kyle, and Drake London, I think this offense should easily be a top 10 offense. I think that's honestly another realistic expectation for us to have for this Atlanta team. And your head coach is a defensive minded guy, so I think all in all, you should have arguably a top 10 offense and at least a top 20 to top 15 defense. And if you tell me at the end of the season that the Atlanta Falcons have a top 10 offense and like a bordering top 15 defense, then I think they reached their expectations. I think their expectations are not to win a championship, but I think their overall goals for this upcoming season is just to be way better than what they have been these past couple years, to take that first step forward to become potentially a championship contender in 2025 or 2026. Coming in at number 4, we're going to be talking about the Arizona Cardinals. Now, last year they went 4-13 and had
this is not even the first time I've heard that somebody said the Cardinals are going to be good. I just don't see it, bro. I just don't see that they have enough talent on like both offense and defense for them to have a bounce back year. I just don't.
-100.
I mean, bringing in Marvin Harrison Jr. was good. Like you gave Kyler Murray a true #1 wide receiver, but outside of him, like who else can really produce?
Of the reason why the Arizona Cardinals were extremely, I don't
like
want
at the wide receiver position, because Trey McBride is good
last year was because of the Kyler Murray injury. But now hopefully you should get a fully healthy Kyler Murray to go along with what could potentially be his best weapon of his entire career in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think they had a pretty awesome draft class, and I think that a lot of those guys should make instant impacts on this team. And I think if they're able to do so, I think you could easily see this team winning somewhere between 7 to 8 games next year. Again, to have a negative 125 point differential and to look as competitive as they did in a lot of their games, I thought was kind of impressive. They were not a good team last year, don't get it twisted, but they won 4 games, and I think they honestly probably could have won about maybe 2 or 3 more of those games, but the fact that they didn't have Kyler Murray till very late in the season, they didn't really stand a chance. So I think a realistic expectation for the Arizona Cardinals is, like I said, win at least 7 to 8 games next year and look extremely competitive against every team you go up against. Does that mean the Arizona Cardinals will make the playoffs? Probably not. It's a pretty good NFC, and I think there's enough teams to
their division is tough as well, because realistically, the Niners, Rams, shit, even the Seahawks may even make the playoffs this year.
Team like Arizona for a wild card spot, but I do think that if Kyler Murray comes back,
but I know for a fact that the Niners and Rams are going to make the playoffs.
Jr. is truly that guy, then we're looking at a team that could surprise a lot of really good rosters out there. Like, I would not be surprised at all if Arizona won 8 games, and of those 8 games, 4 of them were against really good playoff caliber teams. Because I truly do believe that they have a good roster. I liked what I saw from their head coach last year, and I think the team in general, despite having only 4 win games last year, impressed me at certain points last year. So if this new draft class can come in and just play some instant impact football, and if the guys that have already been there can continue to play at a high level, we're looking at a team that could potentially be pretty fun next year and maybe surprise a lot of people out there. Coming in at number 3, we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, it's kind of weird to put the Philadelphia Eagles on.
I mean, yeah, they better have a on bounce back season with all that fucking talent that they have on their roster, bro. At minimum, bro, they should have like 13 wins. Like, come on now.
Because last year they
with
were
the roster they have,
just record wise. Last year they went 11-6 and had a net point differential of a positive 5. But the issues for the Philadelphia Eagles really didn't start happening until very late in the season, once they went up against the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that's where everything started to
every single flaw that team had.
Down south,
then after that point, they had a downward spiral the rest of the season. It was honestly really sad to watch because they were so dominant early on. Hell,
bro, Trayvon Diggs got cooked.
It was honestly really sad to watch because they were so dominant early on. Hell, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And then once they got that 49ers game and the Cowboys game, it just felt like everything was going wrong for them. And when they made it to the playoffs, they matched up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were not a better team talent-wise than the Philadelphia Eagles, but they got beat pretty badly in that one. And then this offseason, they made a lot of big-time changes. They fired both their offensive and defensive coordinators to bring in some more experienced guys in Vic Fangio and, of course, Kellen Moore. And while I have been vocal about how I dislike Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator for this team, I will admit that he is 10 times better than what they had last year. Yeah. With his experience and with the defensive coordinator's experience, I do think this Philadelphia Eagles offense and defense will be good enough to get the job done. And I think it's a pretty realistic expectation for this team to win at least 11
games. And I think we played Philly this year, too. The first time Jalen Hurts and Lamar finna go against one another.
Eagles disappointed big time last year. They were 1 and done in the playoffs after coming off of a Super Bowl in 2022. And I don't think it's a misstatement to say that the Philadelphia Eagles could easily win a championship next year. This is a team with absolute endless bounds of talents. Their quarterback is really good. They have some great receivers. The offensive line is still stout. And defensively, they improved a lot of big positions that they had to fix. I still feel as if the linebacking core is going to be an issue in 2024, but they fixed their secondary. I think their defensive line is still stout, and I think the rest of the team in general should be able to pick up the slack of their not really great linebacking core. So what's a realistic expectation for the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, like I said, at least 11 games won, and I think that they have to make a deep playoff run. I think the worst case scenario, they're out in the second round, but I think best case scenario, you're hosting the Lombardi Trophy. Coming in at number 2, we're going to be discussing the Cincinnati Bengals, who last year went 9-8 and had a net
when Burrow's healthy, they're really good.
15. And it was really a bizarre season for the Cincinnati Bengals because ever since Joe Burrow has come in, it's basically been
but like with the problem that's been going on with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase not showing up at OTAs, and I don't think they even showed up at minicamp as well. So I don't know if that's gonna really fuck with the chemistry that Burrow's got with them. It's probably not going to mess with him and Chase's chemistry, but him and T. Higgins maybe.
And this year seemed seemingly going to be a year of success for this Bengals team.
I don't know,
it
bro.
seemed like everyone was back and that the whole team was talented and healthy, but unfortunately, the one player who couldn't stay healthy the entire season was their starting quarterback in Joe Burrow. The injury started in the offseason when he had some sort of leg injury, and then as the season went on, he went on to have a hand injury, and he tried to play through all these injuries, but it just made his season even worse. And what was the result of it? Well, you ended up seeing your backup quarterback a whole lot more than what you would like to see. And hell, even when Joe Burrow was playing, it looked like he was maybe 40% of what Joe Burrow typically is. But now you're heading into 2024 with a full offseason of hopefully healthy Joe Burrow and hopefully healthy Jamar Chase. And you've made a ton of different improvements and a ton of different changes on your defense and offensive line. And I do think next year this team is better than what they were last year. Again, they went 9-8 and had a net point differential of -18. And I think it's a pretty fair statement to say that
it's crazy that they still almost made the playoffs with Jacob Browning at quarterback.
For a Joe Burrow-led team. I easily think they will surpass that record and probably win at least like 11 games next year and have a net point differential of hopefully something like +50. Because there's way too much talent on this roster, and Joe Burrow is way too good of a quarterback to be a sub-10 win team. And when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter what you do in the regular season until you get to the playoffs, and of course, we all know this Bengals team is typically a pretty good playoff team. It could get to the Super Bowl back in 2021 and having some really good matchups against the likes of the Bills and the Chiefs. And I do think that those are some realistic expectations to meet again in this year's playoffs. I'm not saying you have to make it to a Super Bowl, but I think you have to be able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and so on and so forth. It's a very tough division, it's a very tough conference, and there's going to be a lot of teams bidding to get into that wild card spot or to win the division. And I think the Bengals are going to have a tough time getting there, but I do think that they will persevere and actually get to that point. Again, I think the Bengals are going to be good next year. I think last year was sort of an outlier season, and I'm excited to see what they can do in 2024. But coming in at number 1, we're going to be discussing the New York Jets, who last year went 7-10 and had a net.
I mean, A-Rod getting hurt within like the first 4 snaps really fucked up the Jets last year.
87.
Like having to deal with Zach Wilson. Even though Zach showed some promise at times.
The whole reason why they weren't good last year was because Zach Wilson was their starting quarterback. And that's no disrespect to Zach Wilson, but at this point in the NFL, he should not be a starting quarterback in this league. But now, instead of having Zach Wilson as your starting quarterback, you're going to have Aaron freaking Rodgers, who's going to help this team.
Then you have
awesome
like
next year,
probably a top 5 defense too.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be an MVP candidate this year, and I don't think he's going to be this top 10 quarterback that we've seen his entire career. But I think as long as he is 70% of what he typically is, this Jets team has the potential to win a championship. Because talent for talent wise, this defense is maybe the best defense in the entire NFL. I'll say maybe, I don't think it is, but it's up there for sure. And then offensively speaking, your biggest flaw was the fact that you didn't really have a true wide receiver 2 and your offensive line was despicable last year. So what did you do? Well, you replaced both your tackles and you added 2 new wide receivers who I think are way better than what Allen Lazard gave them last year. So as long as those
Mike
guys
Williams and Malachi Corley, I was very high on Malachi Corley coming out of college. He definitely reminds me of Deebo Samuel. Probably a better receiver than Deebo is, but like with his body build and stuff like that, and his
team is primed for a really good
contact
season.
Balance.
Again, they won 7 games last year just straight up on the back of this defense and whatever you could have gotten out of Zach Wilson. And I will never forget their matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, in which they lost, but damn, they looked really freaking sharp in that game. So you went 7-10 last year with Zach Wilson. I think a good expectation for this team is for them to win at least 9+ games next year and hopefully make a playoff spot. I think the Jets will be better than a 9-win team. If I had to guess, I'll probably say they're going to win like 11 to 13 games next year and probably make it to the playoffs by winning the division. And when it comes down to it in the playoffs, what's the expectations? I don't really know. This is a Jets team that doesn't quite have the resume that the other teams on this list have. So for the Jets, as long as you make it to the playoffs and have some fun playoff games, I think that's a pretty successful season, all things considered. But again, injuries cannot happen for this team. Tyron Smith has to stay healthy. Mike Williams has to stay healthy. Aaron Rodgers has to stay healthy. Breece Hall, healthy. Everybody needs to stay healthy for this team to get to that point. But man, if they go into that playoffs with a fully healthy roster and a fully clicking offense and defense, that might be the scariest team heading into the playoffs. But alright, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.
Hey man, what do you guys think? Y'all let me know down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoy. We do make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Turn on post notification, notify whenever I drop another banger video. We're on the road to 300 subs. Help me get there for more banger NFL content like this. So without further ado, I'm out. Gang!